Thank you, little sister. You helped me eliminate a bad debt, legally and cleanly, and your reward is him, an empty, penniless man. You're a perfect match.
Snow began to fall heavily outside the double-paned, reinforced glass windows, blanketing the historic cobblestone streets of Beacon Hill in white. Inside the 4-story townhouse worth $6 million, the air was warm, thick with the scent of Joe Malone candles and the slow, lingering notes of jazz music. This was the home of Boston's upper crust, people who never raised their voices, yet whose slightest nod could determine the fate of thousands of employees. At a long oak dining table, 12 guests sat around a golden roasted turkey. They were all sharks from State Street, hedge fund directors, M&A lawyers, and venture capital investors. Liam, 38 years old, sat at the head of the table, lifting a glass of expensive Cabernet Sauvignon red wine. He adjusted the pin on his suit lapel and cleared his throat. His appearance was flawless, intellectual, refined, with artistically tousled hair. "You know," Liam said in a warm, low voice, "when I lectured on The Great Gatsby to my Harvard students last week, I told them that Gatsby's tragedy wasn't his death, but his loneliness in the middle of a crowd. Just as Fitzgerald wrote, I was within and without, simultaneously enchanted and repelled by the inexhaustible variety of life." Liam paused, waiting for applause or at least admiring looks. But the room fell silent. A guest named Rob, the bank's vice president, covered his mouth as he let out a loud yawn, his eyes sneaking a glance at the Patek Philippe on his wrist. Another guest was secretly typing messages under the table. "Interesting, Liam," Rob said condescendingly, his voice stretched thin with boredom. "But speaking of variety, what do you think about the Fed raising interest rates by another 0.75 percentage points this morning? The bond market is bleeding." Liam was left speechless. He was a literature professor. He understood metaphors, not bond yields. He stammered, I think it also reflects the social mood." At that moment, Claire, 36 years old, cut in. She sat across from Liam wearing a minimalist black silk dress that radiated absolute authority. "Oh, come on, Rob," Claire said, her voice cold and sharp like a scalpel, without sparing Liam a single glance. "Rising interest rates are an opportunity for us to short those overvalued tech stocks. My fund locked in a 12% profit this afternoon thanks to the NASDAQ slide. Gatsby may have died for love, but we live off volatility. Come on, raise a glass to Q4 profits." The entire table came alive. Eyes lit up, crystal glasses clinked together. "Brilliant, Claire! Truly the queen of M&A. 12% in one afternoon. You're a monster." Liam sat there, his hand still holding the wine glass midair. He was completely invisible. His wife had just saved the dinner by turning him into a clueless fool who knew nothing about the real world. A feeling of emasculation surged up his throat, bitter and choking. His title of professor became cheap in the face of the million-dollar figures his wife had just spoken. No one noticed as Liam quietly stood up and left the table. Liam stepped out onto the second-floor balcony. The Boston winter wind slapped his face with biting cold. The temperature outside was 25 degrees Fahrenheit, about -4 degrees Celsius. Shivering, he pulled out a pack of cigarettes, but the lighter refused to ignite under the strong wind. He cursed under his breath, feeling like a failure even at lighting a cigarette. "Let me help you, Professor." A voice as sweet as honey came from behind him. Liam turned. Standing there was a young woman in the black uniform of a catering staff member hired for the event. It was Ivy. Despite the loose-fitting uniform, Liam recognized her immediately. An intern in his department, the student who always sat in the front row and watched him lecture as if hanging on every word. Ivy stepped closer, cupping her small hands to shield the flame as she flicked on a cheap lighter, producing a small blue fire. The glow illuminated her face, wide, innocent eyes, slightly parted lips, and cheeks flushed pink from the cold. Liam took a long drag from the cigarette, exhaled the smoke, and tried to regain his dignified composure. "Thank you. Ivy, right? I didn't know you worked part-time here." Ivy didn't step back. She moved one step closer, invading his personal space, looking straight into his eyes with undisguised admiration. "Yes, Professor. Poor student," she said with a soft laugh, a smile that was both self-pitying and inviting. "But I'm glad I'm here. Earlier I heard you talking about Gatsby." She paused, her voice dropping, whispering as if sharing a dangerous secret. "That was the only thing with a soul in this house that reeks of money, Professor. They may have millions of dollars, but you're the only one with a noble soul." Her words were like a stream of warm water poured over Liam's withering ego. He looked at Ivy, then through the glass doors into the house, where Claire was laughing freely among wealthy men. The comparison became painfully clear. On one side, a cold she-wolf, on the other, an understanding little lamb. In that moment, amid the snowstorm and the dim yellow lights, Liam knew he had begun stepping into a trap, but he did not know that the one setting the trap was not the innocent girl in front of him, but a far more terrifying force. 1 month after Thanksgiving night, on the morning of their 5th wedding anniversary, the atmosphere in the Italian marble-tiled kitchen was so cold that Liam could see his own breath. Outside, Boston was submerged in the gray snowstorm of December. Claire sat at the head of the table, one hand holding a cup of thick black espresso, the other scrolling rapidly on an iPad Pro. She was reading Bloomberg's Q4 financial report, her brows furrowed with calculation. Liam placed a small, carefully wrapped gift box in front of her. Inside was a first-edition Hemingway book he had searched for over 2 months in rare bookstores. "Happy anniversary, my love," Liam said, trying to find a gentle look from his wife. Claire looked up, a flicker of surprise crossing her eyes, as if she had just remembered what day it was. She smiled, a perfectly manufactured, industrial smile. "Oh, Liam, I have a gift for you, too." She reached into the Hermes handbag on the chair beside her and pulled out a signature green box. Inside was a Rolex, not an ordinary one, but a Rolex Cosmograph Daytona in platinum with an ice blue dial, the toy every man on Wall Street coveted, worth at least $75,000 on the gray market. Liam opened the box, stunned by the sharp, weighty beauty of pure money. But out of a writer's romantic habit, he flipped the watch over, hoping to find an engraving, "Forever Yours" or simply C and L with a date. The back of the watch was smooth, icy cold, empty. "It's beautiful," Liam's voice sank. "But you didn't engrave it?" Claire had already returned to her iPad screen. She replied flatly, without emotion. "I ordered it in a rush. The authorized dealer said it would take 2 weeks to engrave. I didn't want you to wait." As she spoke, she pulled a black American Express Centurion card from her wallet, the ice-cold titanium card, the ultimate symbol of financial power with no spending limit. She held it between 2 fingers and extended it toward Liam, her eyes never leaving the stock charts. "Take this supplementary card. This afternoon, go to Shreve, Crump and Lowe on Newberry Street. Tell them you're Claire's husband. They'll engrave it for you immediately, any font you like." Liam held the heavy black card in his hand. He looked at the expensive watch, then at his wife busy making millions. A wave of humiliation rose to his throat. She wasn't giving him an anniversary gift of love. She was handing him an expensive accessory so he could look worthy of her status. Telling him to engrave it himself was no different than telling him to fill in his own name on the bill. "I have to go now," Claire said abruptly, standing up and finishing her coffee in one gulp. "The Tokyo partners are waiting in the Zoom room. They're 14 hours ahead of us. I can't be late." The door slammed shut. Liam sat alone in the vast kitchen. On the table lay the gleaming Rolex and the powerful black card. He felt less like a husband and more like a high-end kept man who had just been generously paid by his patron after a night of service. This wealth wasn't protecting him. It was devouring his self-respect. 3 days after the Rolex incident, Liam sat in his cramped university office, surrounded by dusty stacks of books and the rattling hum of an old heater. Despite holding the title of professor, his office was tucked away in the most forgotten corner of the humanities building, completely opposite to Claire's glass-walled office overlooking Boston Harbor. A timid knock sounded on the door. It opened slightly, and Ivy stepped inside. Today, she wasn't wearing a server's uniform, but an oversized cream-colored cardigan slipping off one shoulder, revealing her delicate collarbone, paired with tight-fitting jeans. In her hands were a folder of documents and a plastic Tupperware container. "Professor, do you have time during office hours?" Ivy asked, her voice clear and polite. Liam nodded and motioned for her to sit. Ivy placed the folder on his desk. "I'd like to apply to be a research assistant for your new book project. I read the preliminary draft you submitted to the department, and honestly, I'm obsessed with it." Liam sighed, pushing his glasses down the bridge of his nose, his expression uneasy. "Ivy, I'm very sorry. The department just announced budget cuts for adjunct faculty. I don't have a grant to pay you. The university minimum wage is $15 an hour, and I'm afraid—" "I don't need the money," Ivy interrupted quickly, her eyes steady on his. "I know you're writing about the collapse of the American dream. I want to learn from you. Your experience and your way of thinking are worth more than a few dollars. I can work unpaid. I just need you to put my name in the acknowledgments when the book is published." The words struck Liam at his weakest point, his hunger to be recognized for his intellect, not his wealth. While Claire treated his writing as an expensive hobby to kill time, this student saw it as a treasure. Before Liam could respond, Ivy gently slid the Tupperware container toward him. "I noticed you hadn't eaten lunch. The campus cafeteria only had frozen food today. I made an extra turkey sandwich with cranberry sauce. I baked the rye bread myself. My mom always said men who do intellectual work need a lot of energy." Liam opened the container. The smell of toasted bread mixed with turkey and melted Swiss cheese rushed up to his nose. It was simple, warm, and deeply human. Nothing like the cold $500 sushi dinners or the elaborate but soulless French meals he usually ate with Claire. He picked up half the sandwich and took a bite. The taste of homemade food nearly brought tears to his eyes from a sudden wave of self-pity. "It's really good, Ivy," Liam said, still chewing, feeling a strange gratitude rise inside him. Ivy smiled, a bright, mischievous smile Liam completely failed to notice. "So that means you're accepting me, right? I promise I'll be the best assistant you ever had." Liam nodded and signed the unpaid internship application. He thought he had found a kindred spirit. He had no idea he had just signed the death sentence for his own marriage. 5 p.m. that same afternoon. Dusk fell early over Boston, the sky turning a gloomy shade of deep purple. Ivy stood shivering in the university parking lot, both hands buried deep in the pockets of a cheap puffer jacket bought at Walmart. Her battered 2005 Honda Civic was acting up again, the engine coughing like a sick man before going silent. She kicked the tire hard and spat out a crude curse, completely unlike her gentle demeanor from earlier. Just then, Liam walked out of the department building. He didn't see Ivy hiding behind a concrete pillar. Ivy held her breath and watched. Liam headed toward the reserved parking area. He pulled out his key fob and pressed it lightly. The lights of a sleek black SUV flashed twice with authority. It was a Porsche Cayenne Turbo, a machine worth over $150,000. Ivy watched as Liam opened the door, the V8 engine purring smoothly with restrained power, warm air from the heated seats fogging up the windows. Ivy's eyes lit up like headlights. "An adjunct professor making peanuts?" she muttered. "No way. This guy has to be old money, teaching just to kill time." That night, in the cramped rental room she shared with two other students in the run-down Dorchester neighborhood, Ivy sat in front of her laptop and began her investigation. She wasn't researching academic materials, she was researching Liam. With a few basic OSINT search techniques she had picked up somewhere, Ivy found Liam's home address through public voter records. She copied the address and pasted it into Zillow, America's leading real estate valuation website. The result made her stop breathing. A 4-story red brick townhouse on Lewisburg Square, the most expensive area of Beacon Hill. Zestimate $6,450,000. Annual property tax $85,000. Ivy swallowed hard. She scrolled through the interior photos, imported oak floors, crystal chandeliers, a private library. In the mind of the ambitious, calculating young woman, a simple equation appeared. Liam was the owner of the house. If she became the lady of that house, or at least Liam's wife, under Massachusetts law, she would be entitled to half the assets in a divorce, $3 million. She had no idea that the name on the deed was not Liam's, but a trust owned by Claire's family. She was fooled by the glamorous shell Liam was wearing. Ivy closed the laptop and leaned back on the torn mattress. She stared up at the water-stained ceiling, the corner of her mouth curling into a dangerous smile. "I'm sorry, Professor. You're not just a lonely writer. You're my winning lottery ticket." The target was locked. Ivy decided she wouldn't stop at sandwiches. She needed a more dramatic script to close the deal. In late January, Liam and Ivy attended an annual literary conference in Stowe, Vermont, a ski paradise 3 hours' drive from Boston. But nature arranged the perfect stage for sin. A sudden nor'easter storm struck, shutting down Interstate 89 completely. All trips back to Boston were canceled. Liam and Ivy were stranded in an isolated wooden lodge surrounded by snow-covered pine forests. 10 p.m. In the nearly empty hotel lounge, the only sound was the crackling of logs in a massive stone fireplace. Liam sat in a leather armchair, gently swirling a glass of Maker's Mark bourbon in his hand. He had just called Claire. "I'm in Zurich. The signal's bad. Take care of yourself. Don't drink too much." Beep, beep. Liam sighed and stared into the fire. At that moment, Ivy appeared. She had just showered, her hair still slightly damp, loosely wrapped in a smoky gray cashmere shawl, a gift Liam had bought her the week before with the supplementary card. She carried 2 mugs of mulled wine, walked over and sat down on the fur rug at Liam's feet, looking up at him with eyes shimmering with unshed tears. "You know," Ivy said, her voice trembling, "watching you on stage today, I felt like you were so lonely, like a lighthouse lighting up the entire ocean, yet standing alone in the dark." The cheesy metaphor pierced straight through Liam's heart. He set his glass down and looked at her. This girl understood him. She saw the pain Claire had ignored for 5 years. I'm fine, Ivy. That's the fate of those who write, Liam replied, trying to sound strong. Ivy shook her head and leaned forward, placing her small, warm hand on Liam's knee. The sweet scent of vanilla body wash from her skin overwhelmed the sharp smell of burning wood. No, Liam, you don't have to hold yourself together anymore. She changed the way she addressed him, bold, raw. That woman, she turned you into a decorative object in her cold glass cabinet. But here, with me, you're a man, a great man. Ivy pressed her cheek against Liam's hand, a gesture of absolute submission and worship. Liam's reason shattered. He didn't see a gold-digging student acting out a role. He saw an angel saving his soul. He bent down, lifted Ivy's chin, and kissed her. The kiss began gently, then turned ravenous, frantic. They collided with each other in front of the flickering fire while the wind howled outside the windows. That night, in the warm wooden room, Liam believed he had found true love. He had no idea he had just officially stepped into hell. After returning to Boston from the Vermont trip, Liam felt as if he had been injected with a mental stimulant. He no longer felt like a fading shadow inside Claire's vast house. He had a secret now, a private world where he was king. Ivy launched her self-upgrade campaign. One Friday afternoon, she pulled Liam onto Newbury Street, the most luxurious shopping street in Boston. Stopping in front of the gleaming glass windows of a Chanel boutique, Ivy froze, her eyes glued to a black quilted lambskin classic flap handbag. "What's wrong?" Liam asked, hands in his pockets, trying to sound worldly. Ivy lowered her gaze, her voice barely audible. "There's a faculty reception next week. I'm afraid of embarrassing you. Everyone carries designer bags, and I only have this worn-out canvas backpack. I don't want them to think the woman walking beside Professor Liam is so provincial." Another psychological strike straight at his pride. Liam immediately felt a surge of protective responsibility. He took Ivy's hand and pushed the door open. "Come in, you deserve the best." Inside, the air was heavy with Chanel No. 5. A sales associate in white gloves carefully placed the bag on red velvet. "An excellent choice, sir. The price after tax is $10,800. $10,800. Liam swallowed hard. That amount was nearly an entire semester's salary from his adjunct teaching. If it were his own personal money, he would never dare spend it. But now, the spell of wounded pride and Ivy's admiring gaze clouded his reason. Liam pulled out his leather wallet and took out the black American Express Centurion card, the supplementary card Claire had given him. "Go ahead," Liam said, forcing his voice to remain calm, though his heart was pounding. He reassured himself. Claire made this kind of money in a few minutes of trading. She would never notice such a trivial expense. This was compensation for how she had neglected him. The POS machine printed the receipt with a ripping sound like tearing fabric. Liam signed his name. Ivy melted into his arms and kissed his cheek. "Oh my God, Liam, you're the greatest man in the world." Liam smiled, a sense of power spreading through his body. He had bought a beautiful woman's smile with his wife's money. But Liam didn't know that the very moment the transaction was marked approved, an electronic balance notification was sent straight to Claire's phone, where she was sitting in a board meeting halfway around the world. His secret left an electronic trail that could never be erased. On the 42nd floor of the Prudential Center Tower, Claire's office overlooked all of Boston, glowing with city lights. It was 8 p.m. and she was still working, the Bloomberg screen in front of her flashing red and green numbers. Claire's phone vibrated softly on the glass desk. A notification from the American Express Centurion app appeared. New transaction, Chanel Boutique, Newbury Street, amount $10,800, supplementary card, Liam. Claire stopped typing. She didn't frown, she didn't flinch, she calmly took a sip of San Pellegrino sparkling water. She knew Liam. Her husband worshipped minimalism and despised the vanity of luxury fashion. He would never buy a Chanel bag, unless it was for another woman. Claire opened the transaction history for the month. She began connecting the scattered data points the bank's AI had compiled. Sorellina Italian Restaurant, $450. Last Tuesday, lunch. Winston Flowers, $120, sent to an unfamiliar address in Dorchester. Gas station transaction near Stowe, Vermont on the snowstorm day. A behavioral pattern emerged clearly. An affair. Instead of smashing her phone or calling to scream at her husband, Claire did something that sent a chill down the spine. She smiled, a strangely relieved smile. She dialed a high-end private investigator who specialized in serving Boston's elite, someone who collected evidence for billion-dollar divorces. "Stone, it's me, Claire." Her voice was as flat as if she were placing a stock order. "My husband is having some off-balance sheet activity. I want high-quality 4K photos, video, and the full identity of the girl. Most importantly, I want to know how far they've gone." The voice on the other end asked if intervention or intimidation was needed. "No," Claire replied decisively. "Let them continue. Fatten them up before slaughter. I need proof that Liam is 100% at fault so I can nullify any future financial claims. Consider this a long-term investment waiting to be cashed out." Claire hung up and turned her chair toward the window. Reflected in the glass, her face showed no trace of pain. She had been waiting for this moment for a long time. Liam, the bad asset in her life portfolio, had finally provided the perfect reason for liquidation without damaging her reputation. "Eat up, Liam," she whispered to the city below. "Eat your fill. The price you'll pay will be very expensive." In March, the snow in Boston began to melt, leaving behind filthy black puddles on the streets. Liam drove the Porsche Cayenne parked along the Charles River, following Memorial Drive. Inside the car, the heating system was warm. Orchestral music flowed softly from the Burmester speakers. But the air between them was stretched tight like a string about to snap. Ivy sat in the passenger seat, gripping the seatbelt, tears streaming down her cheeks, smudging her mascara. On her lap lay a clear blue pregnancy test, its result hidden from view. "I'm 12 days late, Liam," Ivy sobbed, her voice trembling with fear. "This morning I was vomiting nonstop in the shared dorm bathroom. My roommates are starting to whisper." Liam went numb. His hand stiffened on the leather-wrapped steering wheel. A child. With Claire, they had been married 5 years and never once discussed children, because Claire always said, "Children are a huge liability of time. I haven't IPO'd the company yet, so I'm not giving birth." And now this fragile student was carrying his child? I'll take care of it," Liam stammered, trying to sound responsible. "Don't worry, Ivy." "Take care of it how?" Ivy turned toward him, her eyes suddenly sharp, drilling into his soul. "Are you going to hide me and the baby in the shadows forever? Are you going to let your child be born a bastard while you go home and play the devoted husband next to that icy witch?" She burst into louder sobs and pushed the door as if to step out into the freezing air. "I'd rather leave. I'd rather raise the baby alone than watch you be despised by her. I don't need your money, Liam. I just need you, completely. But maybe you love that big house more than you love me and our child." Ivy's strategic retreat worked perfectly. Watching his small, fragile lover about to throw herself into the cold to protect her dignity, Liam's foolish hero instinct surged stronger than ever. He lunged forward, grabbed Ivy's hand, and pulled her back. No, Ivy, listen to me, Liam said firmly, his eyes burning with blind determination. I don't love Claire's money. I never loved her money. I'll prove it to you. I'll get a divorce immediately. Ivy collapsed against Liam's chest, sobbing. But hidden behind his shoulder, the corner of her mouth curled into a victorious smile. She knew she had just delivered a perfect checkmate. The pregnancy test was actually a fake she had bought online, a prank kit, but it had completed its mission flawlessly, turning Liam into a sneaking adulterer, into a knight ready to sacrifice everything for love. That evening, Liam returned to the Beacon Hill mansion with the fiery resolve of a hero ready to liberate himself. He stepped into the living room where Claire sat in her Eames lounge chair, slowly sipping a glass of Petrus red wine while reading a thick legal folder. The silence was so dense that the sound of Liam's footsteps on the hardwood floor felt threatening. "We need to talk, Claire," Liam said sharply, standing directly in front of her. Claire slowly lowered the folder, removed her delicate gold-rimmed glasses, and looked at him with the calm indifference one reserves for an employee submitting a resignation letter. "I'm listening. What brings you home so early? Credit card declined?" That light sarcasm lit the fuse. "I want a divorce," Liam declared loudly. "I can't stand this fake life for one more second. I'm sick of your coldness, sick of being a decorative accessory in this golden cage." Claire didn't blink. She gently swirled the wine, watching the dark red liquid move in the glass. "A divorce? Because of that intern? The girl who drives an old Honda Civic and likes wearing off-shoulder sweaters?" Liam froze. You know?" "I know everything, Liam. I'm a risk manager," Claire said with a thin smile. "So what do you think she loves you for, your tortured literary soul?" "Yes!" Liam shouted, his face flushing with wounded pride. "She's nothing like you. She doesn't care how much money I have. She loves the real me. She makes me feel respected, something you've never given me." Claire placed the glass down on the marble table. The sharp clink echoed through the room. She stood up, meeting his eyes with a mixture of pity and contempt. "Fine, Liam. If you believe in true love so deeply, then prove it." She walked to the concealed wall safe, turned the code, and pulled out a blue leather-bound document. She tossed it onto the table. "This is the prenuptial agreement we signed 5 years ago. Clause 4.2 clearly states, if you commit adultery and initiate the divorce, you walk away with nothing. No property division, no spousal support, not a single dollar from the trust fund. You take only what you brought into this marriage, your clothes and your books." Claire crossed her arms, raising an eyebrow. "So if that girl truly doesn't care about money, then you becoming penniless tonight shouldn't be a problem for your love story, right? Do you dare walk out that door with empty hands?" It was a perfectly engineered psychological trap, striking straight at Liam's wounded masculinity. Claire was betting on one thing: Liam was too arrogant to admit he needed her money. The living room, filled with the expensive scent of Santal 33, suddenly felt suffocating. Liam stared at the contract on the table, then at Claire. Her calm, almost challenging expression felt like a slap to his face. In his mind, images of Ivy crying, waiting for him, and the imagined child needing a strong father burned vividly. The pride of a man who had always lived in his wife's shadow finally exploded. He let out a bitter laugh. "You think everyone is desperate for your filthy money, Claire?" Liam snapped, his voice trembling with anger disguised as dignity. "You use money to manipulate everything, the stock market, even your husband. But you're wrong. I can live well on my intellect. My upcoming book will be a bestseller. Publishers are lining up for it." It was a blatant lie, one Liam told himself to survive the moment. In reality, 5 publishers had rejected his manuscript in the past month, but he needed the illusion to find courage. Liam grabbed the Mont Blanc fountain pen from the table. Without rereading, without consulting a personal lawyer, an unforgivable mistake in American divorces, he flipped straight to the final page. Scratch, scratch. His signature appeared bold and decisive on the line labeled, Party B, Waiver of All Rights. There, Liam threw the pen down, leaving a small scratch on the marble surface. Now I'm free. You can keep everything, the cold house, the fake parties, and your loneliness. I'm going with someone who truly values me. Claire picked up the document and checked his signature carefully, like a banker verifying a check. She nodded slightly, showing no pain, no attempt to stop him. A very manly decision, Liam, her tone balanced between praise and mockery. My lawyer will file for an uncontested divorce tomorrow morning. You have 24 hours to remove your personal belongings. Liam turned and walked upstairs to pack. His chest felt strangely light, a rush of liberation. He believed he had just performed a heroic act. He had no idea that the moment the pen left the paper, he officially fell from America's top 1% into the ranks of the working poor. No health insurance, no retirement fund, and no roof over his head in one of the most expensive cities in the country. The next morning, exactly 9 a.m., the Boston sky was gray, heavy as lead. Liam dragged 2 large Samsonite suitcases down the spiral staircase. The wheels screeched across the oak floor, painfully loud in the dead silence of the house. He had packed all his clothes, manuscripts, and a few treasured books. In the main foyer, Claire was nowhere to be seen. She had left for work at 6 a.m. Only the elderly butler, Mr. Harrison, stood waiting with his usual professional neutrality. Liam set the suitcases down and reached into his suit pocket for the keys to the Porsche Cayenne. In his mind, he had driven it for 3 years. It felt like part of him. "I'm sorry, Mr. Liam." Mr. Harrison stepped forward, blocking him politely but firmly. "Madam instructed me to collect the car keys and all supplementary credit cards. The Porsche is owned by Sterling Ventures, not personal property." Liam froze. His hand hovered in midair, then slowly dropped. Reality delivered its first slap. He owned nothing, not even transportation. "Fine," Liam sneered, tossing the keys onto the console table. He pulled out his phone and opened Uber. His finger hesitated when he saw the Uber Black option priced at $85, while his personal bank balance showed just over $2,000. He clenched his jaw and selected Uber X for $28. 10 minutes later, an old, scratched Toyota Camry screeched to a stop in front of the grand Beacon Hill mansion. The driver, a scruffy, bearded man, didn't even get out to help. Liam had to wrestle both bulky suitcases into the cramped trunk himself. The car drove off, leaving behind the $6 million mansion. In the rearview mirror, Liam saw the butler closing the heavy oak doors. A glamorous chapter of his life officially ended. 30 minutes later, the car stopped in front of an aging brown brick apartment building in Alston, a neighborhood filled with students and immigrant workers. Ivy stood on the sidewalk, shivering in her coat. When she saw Liam step out of a shabby Uber instead of a shiny Porsche, her smile on her lips froze for a split second. Her eyes scanned his small pile of luggage, searching for any trace of wealth, but found only exhaustion. "I'm here, my love." Liam opened his arms wide, inhaling what he believed was the air of freedom. "I left everything behind. Now it's just you and me." Ivy forced herself into his embrace. Her eyes lingered on the Uber driving away, a horrifying doubt forming in her mind. "Yes, just you and me," she replied softly, but the honeyed sweetness was gone. A bitter note of disappointment crept into her voice. The door of the cramped rental apartment closed behind them. The romantic play ended. The real-life tragedy had just begun. 2 months after the divorce. A 450-square-foot studio apartment in Alston, a noisy neighborhood packed with students and low-income workers. The smell of dampness mixed with stale marijuana from the neighboring unit seeped through the cracks under the door. Liam sat hunched on a battered IKEA sofa bought secondhand on Craigslist, his hands clutching his head. The laptop screen in front of him displayed a brief, formal email from the dean of the university. Due to the sudden termination of funding from the Sterling Foundation, Miss Claire Sterling, we regret to inform you that your adjunct teaching contract will be terminated effective this semester. Liam was officially unemployed. His bank account balance exactly $450. Rent, $1,800, already 5 days overdue. In the corner of the room, Ivy lay sprawled out, her legs propped up on the dining table littered with empty Uber Eats containers. She was no longer the innocent, braided-haired college girl. Ivy wore an oversized tank top, holding a vape pen and exhaling thick clouds of smoke, her eyes glued to TikTok as loud, pounding music blared from the phone. "Hey, Liam," Ivy called lazily without looking at him. "Order some food. I want Oya sushi. I can't swallow these frozen pizzas anymore." Liam turned toward her, his voice hoarse with stress. "Ivy, we can't eat $200 sushi. I just lost my job, and we haven't paid the rent yet." Ivy shot up like a spring, throwing the vape onto the floor. "What? Lost your job? Aren't you a professor?" "I'm just an adjunct," Liam confessed bitterly, "and Claire has cut off every path I had left in Boston academia." Ivy stepped closer, her face flushed red. "Fine, then where's the divorce money? You said you were divorced. Massachusetts is a 50-50 state. Where's the Beacon Hill house money? You should have at least $3 million. Liam dropped his head, mumbling. I took nothing. I signed a full waiver to prove that I loved you, so we could be free immediately." The room went silent for 3 seconds. Then Ivy burst out laughing, a wild, bitter laugh. "Are you fucking kidding me?" Ivy screamed, switching pronouns, unleashing a stream of F-bombs. She grabbed her Chanel bag, the only valuable thing left, and slammed it hard into Liam's shoulder. "You're the dumbest man I've ever met, Liam. I thought you were old money rich. I put up with you, listened to your pretentious literary bullshit for 3 months because I thought you were loaded." Liam stood frozen, clutching his aching shoulder. What are you saying? You said you loved my soul." "My soul?" Ivy spat on the floor. "Can your soul pay the rent? Can your soul buy tickets to the Maldives? I slept with you to upgrade my life, to escape this miserable poverty. Who the hell would love a weak, useless 40-year-old loser like you?" Ivy ran into the bathroom, throwing her belongings into a suitcase. "I'm leaving. I'd rather go back to fucking the weed dealer on the corner than live with a fake professor with no money." The door slammed shut. Liam stood alone in the filthy, chaotic apartment. He realized he had traded a cold but honest diamond for a cheap fake stone coated in sugar. He had lost everything: dignity, career, home, and self-respect. But his tragedy wasn't over. A knock echoed at the door. Not Ivy returning. It was a court process server handing him a summons. Hale and Partners Law Firm, the most prestigious firm in Boston. A 50th floor conference room overlooking the harbor. Liam, unshaven and rumpled in a wrinkled shirt, sat hunched at the far end of the table. Across from him was Ivy, visibly furious, scrolling on her phone while snapping gum. They had both been summoned by Claire's attorney under a non-negotiable invitation to resolve post-divorce disputes and avoid media litigation. The mahogany door opened. Claire walked in. She wore a perfectly tailored white Tom Ford suit, radiating blinding authority. She didn't look at Liam. She didn't look at Ivy. She walked straight to the head chair, sat down and placed a USB drive and a thick folder onto the glass table. "Good morning," Claire said calmly, her voice carrying in the dead silence. "I have 15 minutes before heading to the airport for Paris. Let's keep this efficient." Ivy slammed her hand on the table. "Why did you drag me here? I already dumped your useless ex-husband. I'm about to sue him for emotional fraud." Claire smiled and slid the folder toward Ivy. "Fraud? Interesting. But before you sue, you might want to look at this, little sister." Ivy froze. Liam snapped his head up. "Little sister?" "Page 3, Claire said flatly. It was a DNA test result. Biological match, 99.9%. Same father, different mothers. Ivy is my father's illegitimate daughter with a nail salon worker in the Bronx," Claire stated clearly. "He hid it until his death. In his will, he left her $10,000 to go away quietly. But it seems that amount wasn't enough for you, was it, Ivy?" Ivy jumped up, her face burning red, hatred blazing in her eyes. "Yes, I'm your sister. That bastard abandoned my mother and me to live in luxury with you. I swore I'd destroy this fake moral family. I got close to your husband so you'd feel the pain, to steal the thing you loved most." Liam went numb. He stared at Ivy, the woman who claimed to love his soul, now revealed as a vessel of family vengeance. He was nothing but a tool. "You succeeded," Liam whispered, his voice shattered. "You took me away from her." "Took?" Claire laughed loudly, a clear, delighted laugh with no trace of pain. She stood up, leaning both hands on the table, looming over them. "Ivy, you thought you were the hunter? No, sweetheart, you were the prey." Claire pointed to the USB drive. "I knew who you were 2 years ago. I personally approved your full scholarship and internship placement in Liam's department. I knew your greed. I knew your resentment." She turned to Liam, her gaze sharp as a scalpel. "And you, Liam, I was tired of this marriage long ago. You were a bad investment, weak, lazy, and always complaining. But if I initiated the divorce, state law would force me to give you half my assets, and my company's reputation would suffer. So," Claire shrugged, "I needed a legal reason to liquidate you. I needed you to be at fault. I needed you to walk away voluntarily with nothing. I set the perfect stage, a husband starving for ego validation and a discarded sister hungry for revenge and money. I placed you in the same environment, applied a little financial pressure, the watch incident, and boom, the chemical reaction occurred exactly as predicted." Claire looked straight at Ivy. "Thank you, little sister. Thanks to your seduction and your true love performance, he signed away $10 million. You saved me an enormous amount of money and removed dead weight cleanly. And your reward," Claire pointed at Liam slumped in his chair, "is him, a 40-year-old, unemployed, debt-ridden man full of delusions. You're perfect for each other. Enjoy." The air was sucked out of the room. Ivy stood with her mouth open, realizing she had been completely used. Liam sat hollow, finally understanding that every tragedy stemmed from his own choices and had always been in the hands of the woman he once despised. Claire adjusted her collar and picked up her albino crocodile Birkin bag. "That's all. Security will escort you out the back." She walked out of the conference room. Just before the door closed, she turned back and said lightly, "Never gamble with someone in finance, Liam. We always calculate the worst-case scenario long before you start dreaming." Claire boarded her waiting Gulfstream G650. She slipped the 5-carat diamond wedding ring off her finger and casually dropped it into a bubbling glass of champagne. She leaned back into the leather seat, put on her sunglasses, and closed her eyes in absolute peace. Liam and Ivy stood shivering outside the skyscraper as wind whipped dust into their faces. They looked at each other. No love, no hatred left, only contempt and despair. Two losers standing at the edge of prosperity.